The Scarlet Knights invaded South Philly and left with a win in a thrilling finish at the Link.
It's going to be another sort of watermark kind of game for the Minutemen.
Plus, we go behind enemy lines and speak with Nathan Strauss of the Umass Sports Network for some knowledge on the Minutemen.
And I'm Meg Doyle here with the Rutgers Temple Saturday evening storylines hot off the press.
And I'm Sam Massad, live from the Leocore Walk, where I'll take you inside the tailgate prior to the big game this weekend. Inside the Nest is live, and it starts right now.
Hello and welcome into a new edition of Inside the Nest. I'm Luke Emilie, she's Emilie Cochran. Another week, another game that Temple covers the spread, nearly upsetting Rutgers as 17-point underdogs.
Shame on us for thinking the Owls would get rocked by Rutgers in week 3. Turns out, Temple knows how to compete, but the win is elusive.
It was homecoming at the Link on Saturday, a weekend the Owls hadn't lost on since 2017. E.J. Warner made his first start in a Temple uniform, and he got going on his second drive. On fourth down, Warner finds Adonicus Sanders for a big 18-yard gain. 2 plays later, it's backup quarterback Quincy Patterson into the game, and then he's into the end zone. It's Temple's second straight game with a first-quarter touchdown after going nearly a year without one. Later in the quarter, the Scarlet Knights follow Johnny Football's lead. Utility man Johnny Langen darts ahead for 29 yards, setting up a Rutgers field goal to make it 7-3 Temple. Late in the first half, Warner makes his first big mistake. A batted pass is picked off by Shaquan Loyal, who takes it back to the house. This is Rutgers' only touchdown on the afternoon. With 4 minutes left in the second quarter, Patterson's back into the game, but this time he's stuffed on fourth down, giving the Scarlet Knights a chance to steal some points before recess. Jude McIntomney gets his shot from 38 yards and knocks it wide, sending Temple into halftime, trailing 10-7.
All right, moving into the second half, and with 7:25 left in the third quarter, Rutgers is forced to kick a field goal, putting them up 13-7. A while after, Temple gained control of the ball. E.J. Warner throws a 47-yard touchdown to Jordan Smith to make it a 2-point game. This was the Owls' second and last touchdown of the day. In the ensuing drive, Leighton Jordan breaks through for a 15-yard sack to take down Evan Simon. This was Leighton's second sack of the day, in addition to 6 total tackles. Next up is Temple's last drive of the day. E.J. Warner completes an 8-yard pass to Ian Stewart on 4th and 1. Temple faces its second fourth down of the drive, but it's incomplete. The Owls are close, but it's not close enough. Temple loses this one 16-14.
Now, if you only saw the stats, you may think the Owls won this game. Johnny Langen was the only Scarlet Knight who totaled over 30 yards from scrimmage, and Rutgers didn't score an offensive touchdown. E.J. Warner was solid in his first career start, completing nearly 60% of his passes, throwing for over 200 yards. Edward Sadie got a bulk of the carries at running back, with Jakari Norwood and Darvon Hubbard missing the game due to injury. He only averaged 1.7 yards per rush in the loss.
Defense is really starting to identify their personality of forcing offenses to field goals instead of touchdowns, and that's becoming a consistent thing. And again, just really proud of how hard we played. Obviously, there's some things we can do better to get a different result, but this is something that we can build off of. And again, no moral victories are something that I look forward to, but there is a lot of great things that we can learn and build from this game. So we're going to take that approach and go back to work.
Well, my number was called in practice, so I just prepared all week to make plays this game. And it showed up on game day today. I had a really great practice, I felt like, and it showed up today. Could have played better, but got more work to do. We're gonna get ready for next week.
All week we've been practicing scenarios like that, and I think the defense took advantage of that and applied it to the game. At the end of the day, they did what they were supposed to do. We have some things to work on, but I think Rutgers just took advantage of it at the moment.
All right, E.J. Warner. First collegiate start, threw for 215 yards, 147-yard touchdown to Jordan Smith. But I think the thing that really stood out to me most was how he handled that pick six in the second quarter. Not only was this his first interception of his whole entire collegiate career, but it was the only Rutgers touchdown they had all game. Now, most quarterbacks in this position would look at this and be frustrated, be defeated, let it impact the rest of their gameplay. But EJ handled this extremely professionally, and I think Stan Drayton recognized that as well.
Now, I agree. EJ was solid, but the group that stuck out the most to me was the defensive line. And I said on this desk last week that in order for Temple to hang in this game, they had to hold the Rutgers rushing attack under 150 yards. Remember, they were averaging over 250. Temple held them to 142, so it was a great performance from the D-line in that aspect. But also in the pass rush, Temple had 2 sacks and 8 tackles for loss. This team's now top 10 in the country in both sacks and tackles for loss. So those guys deserve a ton of credit for keeping Temple in this game.
Yeah, sticking with the defense. I mean, last week, all I wanted them to do was just to continue to progress on the defensive side of the ball, and I think they did just that. I mean, they held Rutgers defense to only 210 total yards, no touchdowns at all. They continued to pressure the Rutgers QB, and Leighton Jordan specifically had a great game. He had 2 sacks and 6 total tackles on the day.
We're starting to see a positive trend with the defense, and we're also starting to see a positive connection between E.J. Warner and Jordan Smith. Smith, the tight end, had another touchdown this week. It's the second straight week that he's been in the end zone, and I think this is a good sign for E.J. Warner. A young quarterback always wants to find his safety blanket, the guy that he can trust, and it looks like that is Jordan Smith for him. 4 more catches, over 70 yards. It was a great performance from Smith, and with really only Adonicus Sanders getting catches from the wide receiver room, it's going to be imperative that Jordan Smith continues to be that target for E.J. Warner.
Absolutely. And this Week 3 matchup against the Scarlet Knights ended in a lot of firsts for more than one Temple QB. For more on this, we send it over to OwlSports Update reporter Meg Doyle to tell us more about these Week 3 storylines. Hey, Meg.
Thanks, Emily. Although Temple came up short in its loss against Rutgers, it was an exciting day for E.J. Warner, who made his first career start. The true freshman quarterback threw for 215 yards and completed 19 out of his 32 attempts throughout the game. Number 13 also threw a career-long 47-yard touchdown to Jordan Smith to make it a 16-14 game in the fourth quarter. In the post-game conference, the Owls head coach Stan Drayton spoke on how he knew since fall camp that Warner had the potential to be a great leader in the QB1 position. This Week 3 matchup was a game of firsts. Virginia Tech transfer Quincy Patterson rushed into the end zone for a 1-yard touchdown that happened to be his first since becoming an Owl. Patterson ran the ball 4 times for 7 total rushing yards, 1 resulting in a first down, and another resulting in the first and only touchdown in the first quarter. This 6'3", 235-pound redshirt junior may be Temple's answer to a second-string QB who uses his feet. That will do it for me at Studio Set. Emily and Luke, back to you.
Thanks, Meg. It's time to get into our play breakdown. Luke, what you got?
Well, Meg mentioned a lot of firsts in what she was talking about, so I've got another first right here. You can play it. E.J. Warner, late in the first half, it's his first career interception, his first career pick six, the changing point in this game. At this point, Temple was ahead 7-3, and then Rutgers took a 10-7 lead. They never looked back. They never relinquished that lead. It was a big point in this game. So we're going to play it back again. Warner has Adonicus Sanders in motion. You can stop it right here. Now, the one thing that Stan Drayton said in his weekly press conference was that E.J. Warner can get better at recognizing coverages pre-snap and also setting up his protection. So right here, Warner, you can see that they're going to be in man-to-man because when Sanders is in motion, the man follows him. So you can play it again. Warner doesn't quite pick it up, and he doesn't pick up the fact that there's a blitz coming. You can stop it again. Shaquan Loyal is coming in on E.J. Warner with no one in front of him. Warner missed that protection a bit, but I still think he makes the right read out of it. He knows that where the pressure's coming from is probably where the space is going to be open. He sees Adonicus Sanders, who has plenty of space. It'd be about a 5-yard chunk. But you can play it again here. Loyal just makes an athletic play, knocking it into the air, and he picks it off. That never happens on batted balls, but he takes it all the way back to put Rutgers ahead 10-7.
All right, this next play is a 15-yard sack by Leighton Jordan. This sack was his second of the day. Boom! Down goes Evan Simon right there. But let's take a closer look at this. We'll stop it right here. You can see Leighton Jordan right here on the edge. And if you play it, he's going to break through 2 blockers right here and go straight to Evan Simon, targeting him this entire time. Boom! Down he goes again. Now, this play ultimately knocked Rutgers out of field goal position, and it was really one of the most monumental plays of the game.
Man, you could see on those sidelines, there was a lot more energy in the link for a Temple game than we've seen in a long time. But the best atmosphere may have come before the game started, specifically in Lot K. Inside the Nest reporter Sam Massett is live at the Owl statue on campus with some tailgate talk. Hey, Sam.
Thanks, Luke. The Owls hosted the Scarlet Knights this past weekend for their homecoming game. It was a crowded stadium with not only students, alumni, and their families, but also a significant number of Rutgers fans as well, reportedly having 20 bus loads of students taking the trip down the New Jersey Turnpike to the Lincoln Financial Field.
It's that one game of the year where Temple fans are the center of attention, at least in pregame, no matter when they graduated. On Saturday, students and alumni had the chance to gather together for homecoming with their families and friends to cheer on the Owls. Before the game against Rutgers, Temple had won 3 straight homecoming games.
Here to support Temple, going to beat Rutgers today, so it's great to be back on campus, back at the link. So
The win didn't happen, but both Temple and Rutgers fans enjoyed their time filling Lot K with a variety of activities. Some were socializing in Tailgate Village, others were grilling, and even some playing competitive games of cornhole.
Really fun. It's really fun to be with the community. It's a good game. Hopefully we win, but I'm just here for the fun and hanging out with my friends. I like meeting new people. You get to play games with them. Everyone's kind of inviting at tailgating, which is really nice. Yeah.
No matter the age, Owl fans were in high spirits all day dressed in cherry and white to cheer on the team against the Scarlet Knights.
Thousands of fans of all ages come together in the parking lots to celebrate, including Temple's favorite alumni, the Temple Tempers.
Go Owls!
Temple's my favorite because my mom got me into it, and it's just so much fun to watch the game.
Fight, fight, fight! For the cherry and the white! For the cherry and the white! Let's fight, fight, fight! Go Owls!
The Owls were on a homecoming upset win streak, which came to a halt to Rutgers this past weekend. It started back in 2018, where Temple took down ranked Cincinnati in overtime 24-17. The following year, they took down the ranked Memphis Tigers 30-28. COVID didn't allow a homecoming game in 2020, but that didn't stop Temple from coming back and upsetting Memphis again 34-31 in 2021. Despite the loss, the Owls put up a great fight to Rutgers with the help of an electric home atmosphere. The final attendance was a little over 33,000 fans, which is double the amount last week and actually the highest number in attendance in over 3 years. Reporting from the Leah Chorus Walk, I'm Sam Massett. Back to you guys on desk.
It's time for our first break of the day. Next up, we'll hear from head coach Stan Drayton on the close loss to Rutgers.
We'll also hear his thoughts on a former starting quarterback making the transition to wide receiver. Inside the Nest, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Inside the Nest. Stan Drayton's weekly press conference had a lot of QB talk with E.J. Warner, but also a potential transition for DeJuan Mathis from quarterback to wide receiver.
In part one, Coach Drayton talks about the importance of a big crowd and discussed his reasoning for going for it on 4th down 6 times.
I'd like to first acknowledge our crowd and our fans. It was a phenomenal atmosphere for homecoming weekend, and the showing in the stands was something that provided energy for our football team. It was a dynamic environment that was absolutely awesome to experience. And you know, I just hope that these fans keep coming back because our kids really fed off of them, and just to see that stadium light up in those moments, it was just awesome to be a part of. So we're preparing for UMass, you know, putting this game behind us, bringing the things that we can enhance along with us, and we need those fans out there to help us push forward. It was awesome.
Based on what you know about UMass so far, what are some things that have stuck out to you heading into this game on Saturday?
Scrappy unit. They play with a lot of passion defensively, very physical. They give you multiple looks. I mean, they're going to go from 4 down to 3 down. They have a very extensive blitz package that we need to prepare for. We really got to lock in and be disciplined with our eyes. Our quarterback, offensive line's got to be locked in. We got to play as a cohesive unit against UMass offensively. Defensively, they got a quarterback that can throw it. I mean, he throws on time, and you know, he's got receivers that are making good plays for him out there. Offensive line is a very physical group. They're really good with their hands, and particularly the left guard, you know, is a very good position blocker. I mean, he gets locked on you. A lot of people are having a tough time getting off of him. And they have the ability to run the football. They run the ball probably 72% of the time, and they've got a really good running back that if he gets his momentum going, he's tough to bring down on the first contact. So we got our work cut out for us.
You went for it a couple times on 4th down in your own territory, particularly the 4th and 1 after the encouragement once you got stuffed, and then the 4th and 2 when Sadie got tripped up. As you went back and looked at the film, did you still feel good about your process and the decisions you made there, and feel like it was the right decision at that time?
Absolutely. I feel great about those calls, and I believe in our players to be able to make those plays. And when our defense is playing as well as they're playing, we're allowed to be really aggressive on offense. So we would do it all over again. Absolutely.
How much is that, as much analytics in terms of how, you know, feeling you're going to make it, and also trying to, you're early on here and you want to set that culture and that mindset that, you know, you're going to be aggressive?
All the above. It is analytics, but it's also setting a mindset for our football team. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to play the aggressive style of play here at Temple. And if that, in regards to the players executing on the football field and the coaches calling plays, that's our mindset moving forward. It's a Temple tough mindset. Be aggressive.
Take people inside what EJ.
That was part 1 of Stan Drayton's presser. Emilie, what did you take from it?
It was just so great to see Stan Drayton be so excited about how many fans were, you know, in the stands for this Week 4 matchup. I mean, out of my 4 years being a college student here, I don't think I've ever seen a crowd that big, especially a crowd that big all the way until the 4th quarter. I mean, I didn't really start seeing people leave until the 2-minute mark in the 4th. So I feel like when they have 33,000 people in the stands, it makes them play better. I feel like some people might think it makes them a little bit more nervous, but in my opinion, I think, you know, they play better against, you know, a higher school, a better school, and they play better with more people in the crowd.
I think they were very confident feeding off that crowd, and I think Stan Drayton was as well. I loved when he talked about the 4th down, and he stood behind his decisions. You mentioned it. They went for it 6 times on 4th down, converting 3 of them. I was happy that he stood behind it, but what really stood out to me is he preached the confidence in his players to make the plays. When we saw Week 1 against Duke, when they didn't go for it on 4th down at a crucial point in the game, Stan Drayton said he didn't think they were going to convert it. That's a big difference 2 weeks later. He believes in his guys, and that's what I really took from it. So now we're going to move on to part 2 of Coach Drayton's weekly talk. It's almost all about the QB spot, how he wants to handle it, and why E.J. Warner is the #1 guy.
So along those lines, I guess it's listed as a 3rd-string quarterback. Is that his role now, or are you starting to use him or practice him at other positions to get him on the field?
We're moving him around. We're taking a look at him at wide out here and there, and you know, he's always going to be a guy that could help us at quarterback. But again, you know, we put Quincy in the game in a 2-quarterback system. Let's face it, I mean, this is a 6'6" frame, a guy that can run a 4.40, and he's a talented athlete. So we're going to evaluate UMass and see where he's the best fit for us to beat UMass.
Some things that you're looking for the team to tighten up in this last game before conference play starts?
We got to do a much better job of protecting the football. We got to establish the run game. defense has set a standard. I got to make sure that they hold themselves to that standard, and we got to create some takeaways.
From EJ's point of view, I mean, he only played basically like a half in week 2, but did you see any major growth or major improvements that you saw him playing a full game and just settling into just, playing a full game compared to just like a half that he played in the second week?
He's doing a good job of managing situations. Things weren't always perfect for him at wide receiver in regards to guys running the proper depth and running the proper routes, but he's throwing the ball on time. And that's something that's critical for an offensive line, right? There's a reason why there's no sacks. You can sit there and say the offensive line is doing a great job, but EJ could take some of that credit as well by just getting the ball delivered on time. He knows where to go with the football. I think there's still a lot of growth in coverage awareness. We gave up an interception for a touchdown off a batted ball.
Take people inside what EJ is like off the field. I mean, I'm sure his whole life he's dealt with, like, oh, you're Kurt Warner's kid. He has that last name. Saturday was another layer for him. He starts, and he has a lot of work left ahead of him, but made some good throws under pressure. What is he like in the building, and how does he carry himself as an 18-year-old freshman who's still learning but is starting to show signs of promise?
He's very mature. He's a film rat. Loves the game of football. He puts the time in, the investment in the film room. I'm learning that he's a little bit of a quiet leader too. He's not just going in there and watching film by himself. He goes in there, sits down, and one day I walk in there, there's a bunch of receivers, a bunch of old linemen just standing around this kid, and they're just talking ball. And those are really unique signs that you're going to get from a freshman. Those are the things you expect from your quarterback, though, right? But those are very unique to see this early in EJ. But EJ's creating his own narrative. Yes, his father was a great player, and I'm sure he instilled some football IQ in him. But EJ is writing his own story right now, and we're very happy to have him.
Coach, going back to your pass rush with Leighton.
That was part 2 of Stan Drayton's presser. Luke, what did you take from it?
I loved the story about EJ Warner off the field. Credit to John DiCarlo for asking a great question and going into the mind of Stan Drayton. I mean, he talked about the story about EJ being a film rat and how when he goes in to watch film, the receivers and the O-linemen are in there with him looking over his shoulder. I mean, that is great stuff. He's a true freshman. This guy's 18 years old, and he's got the respect of his entire team. It was evident after the game with the way Adonicus Sanders talked about him, and it's evident that his head coach shares that same respect.
Absolutely, and we can't avoid talking about Stan Drayton and what he said about Dwan Mathis, obviously getting moved to 3rd on the depth chart, and they're trying him in the wideout position. I don't think either one of us could have seen this coming. I also don't think either one of us can imagine EJ Warner throwing to Dwan Mathis, ever. But it could be happening, and it's a possibility, and the more I think about it, the more, is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Or is it just like kind of there because nothing is set in stone? Stan Drayton said he's practicing there, but we can't afford to lose his athleticism on the offensive side of the ball. So they're just trying him there. Nothing is confirmed, but I did think it was really interesting how he said that he's trying him in the wideout position. If you haven't noticed by now, it's become a trend to hear from media experts from opposing teams. For week 4, it was Nathan Strauss, a radio and TBT play-by-play announcer for the Umass Sports Network. In 2021, Nathan was awarded Umass Broadcaster of the Year and has been a part of WMUA, Umass's student radio station, since 2019.
Emilie and I will head behind enemy lines to chat with Nathan before this week's game against Umass on the other side.
Plus, we'll look at some tools for success when the Owls face the Minutemen. Inside the Nest is coming right back.
Welcome back to Inside the Nest. The Owls welcome the University of Massachusetts Minutemen to the Link this week to wrap up a 3-game homestand. It's only the 3rd matchup with Umass all time for Temple, with the last game being a 29-21 Owls victory back in 2017.
Umass hasn't won more than 1 game in a season since 2018, but they dominated in their Week 2 matchup against Stony Brook. The game ended in a 20-3 shutout.
The Minutemen had an opportunity to grab their first win of the season, that coming against an FCS opponent in Stony Brook. Quarterback Gino Campiotti led the way for Umass with 90 yards and a touchdown through the air, but also adding 72 yards rushing. The biggest play of the game was a Jordan Mahoney interception that he returned 94 yards for a touchdown. Umass had 2 picks in the game and went on to win in dominant fashion 20-3 for their first victory of the season.
This past weekend, Luke and I had the chance to speak with Umass football play-by-play announcer Leighton Strauss. He starts with his thoughts on how important this game is for the guys to the north in this week's edition of Behind Enemy Lines.
It's going to be another sort of watermark kind of game for the Minutemen, because as we've seen with Temple this year, they can look pretty good like they did this last weekend. They can also look pretty bad like they did against Lafayette, which I think gives the Minutemen some hope.
What do you think the biggest strength and the biggest weakness of this UMass team is?
I think the biggest strength is probably the run game. UMass has looked pretty good on the ground over the first 3 games of the season. I would also give a secondary shout out to confidence. UMass picked up their first win in the new era of Don Brown at UMass this last weekend. Admittedly, it was against an FCS opponent in Stony Brook, but they held them to 3 points, which was the lowest total UMass has held an opponent to since 2006. Special teams has been really, really bad, and I don't think anyone has made any secret of that. UMass, especially in the punting game, lost their 4-year starter, George Georgopoulos.
And I'll go back to one of the strengths you mentioned, which was the run game. And there are a lot of different guys that it looks like from the outside that contribute to this running game, with guys like Ellis Merriweather, Tim Baldwin at running back, and then even the quarterback in Gino Capiati. So what are the different skill sets that those guys bring to the table, and what makes them so impressive running the ball?
Well, I think we'll start with Gino. Gino is a really good running quarterback. He loves to engage contact. I think he's one of those football players who just really enjoys getting hit. Ellis Merriweather was a JUCO transfer a couple of years ago. He put up huge numbers last year as really the only option in the running back room for the Minutemen.
You mentioned a few transfers there. This year there are 19 total transfers on the 2022 roster, including 14 from Power 5 institutions. How do you think they benefit the team, and can you highlight a few others if you can?
Yeah, I think, they benefit the team because they all bring different experiences. In the football world, like I think most sects of the world or parts of the world, is fairly small. So with a new coaching staff as well, it's pretty easy to find connections.
Last question from me. Can we get an overall game score prediction from you?
I'm going to say Temple 33, UMass 20. But I think that I'm not entirely sure. I'm not going to bet the ranch on it.
We want to thank Nathan again for coming on and chatting with us. Although he's not betting the ranch on it, we appreciate his score prediction. So the thing I want to focus on is the strength he talked about of UMass, running the ball. And I think it's more of a style than a strength for them. This is a team that has run the ball 155 times this season. Compare that to just 47 pass attempts. They want to run the ball, and they will do it even if they're losing. They lost their first 2 games by 30+. They continued to run the ball. So I think with this UMass team, if you can stop the run, Temple's going to have a good day.
You mentioned a lot of homegrown guys there, but a lot of UMass contributors came from elsewhere. Most of the transfers came from Penn State, Rutgers, and even a few from Michigan. While many of the Minutemen come from smaller areas around Massachusetts, these specific guys have experience playing in big game day atmospheres and aren't strangers to big crowds. We'll see if their past experiences help them during this Week 4 matchup against the Owls.
A lot of transfers and a relentless run game on the Minutemen side. Now it's time to turn things over to Temple, see what they have to do to be successful and go 2-2.
So now that we've scouted Rutgers, it's only right we pull out our tools for Temple. Hammers and all. Start us off strong, Luke.
Well, I'm grabbing the toolbox and I'm turning it over, dumping the tools out. Just like the Temple defense needs to force a turnover, through 3 games, the Owls are still looking to create their first turnover in their defense. They've played a lot of run-heavy offenses, including one again coming up this week. So interceptions will be hard to come by. Fumbles will be the avenue to turnover number 1 this week.
Tool number 2, E.J. Warner needs to spread the ball out. He targeted Adonicus Sanders about 42% of the time, completing 8 total passes to the 6'1 receiver. Although Warner made a clear connection to number 5, he needs to be less predictable with who he throws to. It's a good and a bad thing to have a go-to guy, but he also needs to go through progressions and look to see if other receivers are open at times throughout the game.
For tool number 3, it will be imperative for the Owls to get Umass into 2nd and 3rd and longs. If Temple can get tackles for loss on 1st down, they'll put Umass in a position to pass to continue drives, which is a place the Minutemen are not comfortable being in. Stop the run on 1st down, and the Temple defense will feast.
All right, last tool of the day. Get into the receiver's hands faster. I know I'm picking on E.J. Warner and the receiving core, but that's only because I see the potential. Warner has great timing, getting the ball to the receiver as they're finishing their routes. But there were so many times where the ball wasn't traveling fast enough through the air. And when you face good teams with good cornerbacks, they're likely to jump the routes. He needs to add some more zing to the ball because it'll make it much more harder for the defense to stop the passing game. 4 tools for 4 weeks on September 24th. We'll see if the Owls put these tools to use this Saturday at Lincoln Financial Field. Kickoff starts at 2 p.m. for the 3rd week in a row, but if you can't make the game, you can watch at home on ESPN+. But as always, don't forget to check all our updates out on Twitter at OwlSports Updates.
We're up against another break, but coming up, we'll hit on some big question marks as the Owls near conference play with our No Huddle segment.
Plus, we take a look at our score predictions from previous weeks and bring it around broad with some new game predictions for this Saturday when we return. Inside the Nest will be right back.
Welcome back to Inside the Nest. Now, we've gone behind enemy lines on Umass, and we looked at Temple's tools for success. Now, Emily, I'm not wearing a watch, but I think that means we're up against the clock.
Oh, it's time. Let's go No Huddle.
All right, the first question, is Temple trying too hard with Dewan Mathis, trying to convert him to wide receiver?
I don't know. This is a tough one for me, but Stan Drayton has really emphasized the athleticism Dewan Mathis has. Do I think they're trying too hard? No. If I'm being honest, I don't see the harm in trying him in a new position. The wide receiver room hasn't looked the strongest recently. Adonicus Sanders is there and reliable, but I haven't seen much from Jose Barbone since week 1. I don't think it hurts the team if Dewan is just practicing as a wideout. Plus, Stan Drayton hasn't confirmed if he's playing or where he's playing against UMass.
I get what you're saying, Emily, but I'm going to have to go the other way here. Stan Drayton preaches time after time that nothing is given on this team and every position is earned every week. Now, I understand that he was once the top recruit in Temple football history, and you don't want to watch him sit on the bench all season. But for me, he can't take snaps away from Sanders, Barbone, or Ian Stewart, guys who have all shown flashes this season. Maybe in a blowout, you give him a shot, but otherwise, I think it's better off keeping him in the QB room.
All right, let's go to question number 2. When was the last time you felt this positive about a loss?
For me, I'm heading back to 2019, Temple's last winning season and their last bowl appearance. It was a game against 19th ranked SMU, who boasted a 6-0 record at the time. Temple was ranked 25th and came into the game 5-1, and the Owls lost this game 45-21. They had already beat 2 ranked opponents at that point in the season in Maryland and Memphis. I have optimism that winning 2 out of 3 against ranked opponents would mean they'd be just fine going forward.
I'm sticking with the 2019 season. For me, it has to be the matchup between the Owls and the Bearcats. It ended in a 2-point game, and Cincy ended up taking home the win 15-13. A bright spot in this Temple game was wide receiver Jaden Blue. He finished with 13 catches for 120 yards, and this was his 3rd straight game with at least 10 catches and 100 yards. During this Week 11 matchup, the Bearcats secured the AAC East title and remained the only unbeaten team in league play. So Temple being able to compete with them was a win in my eyes. So here's a quick look at our score predictions from last week. Luke, Sam, and Jake are tied up at 3-0, while my record still sits at 2-1.
Now, to be fair, we were all right, but we predicted a massive Rutgers win. We all had a score difference of at least 18 plus in a game that was decided by just 2 points. So we talked a lot about optimism in question 2. Emily, does your game prediction follow that positivity?
It does. I've got Temple winning 30-10 this week. I think the Temple defense locks in against a UMass team that hasn't won more than 1 game in a season since 2018. Not to mention, Temple has a more well-rounded roster with guys who are used to playing in huge NFL stadiums. Most of these Minutemen have only experienced playing for smaller crowds in smaller stadiums. Temple's performance against Rutgers last week has me sold on a Temple win in week 4.
Emily, I'm with you again. I've got Temple winning 27-7. This game is strength on strength, and right now, I've got more confidence in Temple's run defense than UMass's run offense. The Temple defense will force Campiati to throw more than the Minutemen would like. Temple will cruise to a win. So now, Sam and Jake, are you going to make it a full sweep for the 3rd straight week?
I'm going to have to agree with you guys. I'm going with the Owls 36-7. You know, seeing how they competed against Rutgers last week, I think Temple is really on the right track. Umass is a team that's only given up 100 or has given up 100 points exactly already this season. And once Temple finds that rhythm, moving the ball down the field, I think the Minutemen are going to have a hard time keeping up.
I have Temple in this one 34-13. I think this UMass team stacks up very similarly to Lafayette, who the Owls beat 30-14 in week 2. I think Temple will run all over UMass, who has given up a combined 10 rushing touchdowns in their 2 losses to Tulane and Toledo. Not to mention, Temple defense has given up just 2 touchdowns in their past 2 games. And speaking of the defense, when we return from break, I will be highlighting one defender in particular who I think could cause a lot of problems for the Minutemen on Saturday. It's our last break of the day. Inside the Nest will be right back.
Welcome back to Inside the Nest. Now, Emily and I have broken down the Temple-UMass game just enough.
We now bring in ITN reporter Jake Gable, who has his own book on Temple's Guide to Victory. Hey, Jake.
Thanks, Emily. Welcome to Gable's Guide. With Temple gearing up for its last out-of-conference game, I'm here to give my guidance on how Temple can pick up a win against UMass. My first piece of advice is to utilize Jalen McMurray's strengths to the fullest. McMurray is a redshirt freshman who has already displayed his talent and leadership abilities enough to earn a single digit. He was all over the field against Rutgers, leading Temple in total tackles with 7 and also forcing a fumble against the Scarlet Knights. As the leader of the secondary, Temple has allowed less than 90 passing yards in 2 consecutive weeks and are looking to make it 3. Teams are obviously scared to throw the ball his way. If I'm defensive coordinator DJ Elliott, I am not letting other teams take McMurray out of the game. I would involve him in many different ways, like sending him on a corner blitz, which is how Rutgers forced its pick 6 last week against the Owls. My next piece of advice is preventing UMass's quarterback Gino Campiati from doing what he likes to do most, run. Campiati leads the Minutemen in rushing yards. Last week, Temple let Rutgers quarterback Johnny Langan rush for 79 yards. Considering Campiati only has 17 completions on the season, the Owls defense should crowd the line of scrimmage and force UMass to throw. Especially when you have guys like Jalen McMurray in the secondary, the Owls shouldn't be scared to blitz a couple extra guys and force the receiver to beat them one-on-one. My final piece of advice is to stand Drayton. Stay aggressive on 4th downs. The Owls have gone for it on 4th down 9 times in just 3 games this season. They went 3 for 6 on 4th down last week. I agree with Stan's aggressive play calling. It shows the confidence in your offense and is absolutely demoralizing to the opposing defense when you convert on 4th down.
Now, Jake, you mentioned Stan Drayton's mindset and being aggressive, but another thing that he mentioned was on his mind was the fans. Now, you were at the link on Saturday. What was the atmosphere like from your perspective, and have you seen it like that in your time at Temple?
I haven't, honestly. That was probably the greatest atmosphere I've been at. I was on the field for Quincy Patterson's touchdown, and that was the loudest it's ever been at the link for a Temple game in my experience. It was crazy.
All right. Let's take a look at our preview OSU full screen. Lucky for you, we aren't the only ones here on a weekly basis. OwlSports Update is back every Thursday this week with Eric Jessberger and Matt Rainier side by side. Our sports brief is posted on Twitter every Monday, and of course, Luke and I share the desk every Tuesday with ITN at noon. And that doesn't include all of our social media content. If you like Temple sports, be sure to give us a follow for athletic updates on the daily.
That's all the time we have on this edition of Inside the Nest. As always, make sure to follow along with all of our content on social media at OwlSports Update so you don't miss out on any Temple football news.
For our entire crew, he's Luke Emilie, I'm Emilie Cochran. Have a lovely day, everybody. We'll see you again next week.